welcome to Destination Draft Day. You are here at the end of the mock draft season, the end of the 2021 draft season. I'm Michael Rochman with Bailey Kumar here, and we are excited to deliver it to you. Bailey, how you doing on this Monday?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing perfectly fine. Ready to dive into it. We got 32 picks. We're doing one round only. We may have some trades in here. We'll see. Everything is live, so everything is completely thrown at the wall with you. I will be taking the odd picks. Bailey will be taking the even picks. And, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I think the obvious answer here at the number one pick is Trevor Lawrence. And the QB out of Clemson is obviously been rumored to be the first pick of the draft since he put on a show as a true freshman in the playoffs. And now the time has come. The Jacksonville Jaguars won the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, and that's the pick for me.
Yeah, pretty obvious pick. I think my next pick will also come as no surprise to those who've been following the mock and everything, the mock cycle and everything recently. It will be Zach Wilson from BYU. This has been rumored for months. I don't know, it's kind of a no-brainer pick. And I think the draft really starts at 3 for Europe.
Absolutely. And, for this pick, there's been plenty of speculation for what could happen, what the rumor is. I'm sure there's plenty of hate about it because there's just so much that people have when it comes to opinions on quarterbacks. People really want to plant their flag on 1-2 guys, and a lot of people aren't planting their flag as much for this guy, but it sounds like it's the pick. Everyone that seems to have inside sources is very adamant that this is the most likely selection. And with that, the third pick of the draft is Mac Jones out of Alabama for the San Francisco 49ers, a tremendous pocket passer. And, I understand that a lot of people would love to see Trey Lance, would love to see Justin Fields, and I agree. I think that would be the ideal situation, but that doesn't mean that Mac Jones can't find success in San Francisco. I think he's still going to be a very good quarterback, and I think the 49ers are still getting their franchise future key piece under center for many years to come.
Yeah, the reports have been it's either going to be Mac Jones or Trey Lance. Both of them will be fantastic in San Francisco, I think. It's really just comes down to who do you think can best run the Shanahan offense? And, there's a good argument that it's Mac Jones right now. But, on the other hand is do you trade, to future first for Mac Jones? Is he the type of guy who's worth that? And, I think there's going to be a lot of teams happy that the 49ers take Mac Jones, one of them being the Falcons, who are up next. And
now, I wanna speak to you real quick on this potential selection that you're about to make. Look, I'm the Patriots. I understand that there's plenty of need at the quarterback position. Bill Belichick gives you a little call. He says, first and foremost, I want to offer you two special things: the 15th pick in the draft and my first rounder next year. But I know there's a little bit more that you're going to need, so we'll say the Patriots second this year as well, number 46, and the third round pick next year. What do you say to that?
I don't want to get too bogged down in specifics. The framework of that is good enough for me right now. We'll take it. I think the Falcons are kind of dedicated to Matt Ryan at QB, at least for the next 2 years. It does make a lot of sense to me to take a quarterback and just have him sit behind. I think the Falcons are still a playoff team. You got Drew Brees leaving New Orleans. You got Sam Darnold, who, on the Panthers. And, you still got Brady there in the division, but, he's another year older. So this could be the prime. The Falcons could win the division next year. Maybe a little bit of a crazy statement. So, yeah. So I think the Falcons will happily trade back, pick up some more capital. New regime would love the extra picks to kind of build what they want.
Absolutely. And with the Patriots pick, the trade up is the official indication of Justin Fields, the quarterback out of Ohio State. I think this is someone that could potentially slide on draft day. From what we're hearing, it sounds like people would be shocked to see him fall, maybe from the fan side, but on the media inside sources guy, they're saying it's very likely he's on the board at 7. And if someone doesn't trade up, he can make it to 8. He can make it to 9 and potentially fall out of the top 10. I assume that with all the teams that are definitely QB needy, Chicago, Washington, New England, someone is going to make the decision to trade up. Whether it's Denver making a small trade up to just get in that position to get their QB, or whether it's one of these teams really giving up probably a large amount of picks to get their future at quarterback. I do think that we're going to see some big trades in order to get a quarterback under center for the future for one of these teams.
Yep, especially if you're the Bears, Ryan Pace, and who knows how much longer he has the GM. This kind of make or break year for him. So I could see him trying to trade a load of picks to try and save his job for sure.
Absolutely. And with the next pick, I'm sure a lot of people are going to make their jokes all they want about it, but I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. There's just so much talent here on the wide receiver aspect. Getting that key piece, I think, elevates this wide receiver room to what is already a good group of Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and adding Jamar Chase is huge. Cincinnati obviously has holes on the offensive line. They need to add some more to protect Burrow, but I think they can do that in the second round in a class like this. Adding a guy like Chase, who I think can be a transcendent talent at the wide receiver spot, is definitely a great addition, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, like you said, there's a ton of offensive tackle depth in this draft. There's a lot of offensive line depth in this draft. You can go second, third round. I think that's what a lot of Bengals fans and a lot of people forget is that there are 7 rounds to this draft. You can get guys at different positions at each round. With that being said, the Miami Dolphins are up next, and I have them taking Kyle Pitts. When they traded back up after the trade down, it seemed clear to me that they were looking for either Kyle Pitts or like Jalen Waddles, one of the elite talents. There's been talks of Sewell here, but I just think they traded back up to get the elite talent, which is Kyle Pitts.
Absolutely. And, even if they were to go wide receiver, I think the big thing is you need to find a way to help out Tua. So whether that's offensive line protection, a skill set wide receiver, tight end, or, just somewhere helping out this team, I think the Dolphins have a important job to do in terms of getting guys that can help take this offense to that next level. I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to be perfectly fine, but I think it's very important that the Dolphins invest in him, give him the best opportunity to succeed, and adding a guy like Kyle Pitts is definitely doing that. With the number 7 pick, I think the Detroit Lions, while they may not have as big a need as some of the other teams in this class, I think it's important that they go and get one of the better players in this class. And for me, that's Penei Sewell, offensive tackle out of Oregon. You can move over Taylor Decker, or Penei Sewell can play right tackle. I think that there's plenty of talent here. The Tyrell Crosby starting at right tackle, I don't think changes your overall need and makes you pass on a guy like Sewell. So with that being said, I think the Lions just go BPA, and Penei Sewell for me is clear BPA here.
Yeah, I mean, he will be an important piece in the rebuilding that team. He's kind of had a slide recently. He might not even be the first offensive tackle off the board with the recent talks, and might be Slater. And I don't know, he could be a guy that sees a slide on draft day, or he could be a guy that just ends up, going right where he's supposed to. It kind of reminds me of the Andrew Thomas from last year, where there's a lot of talk late in the cycle about, could it be Wills, it could be Becton at 4, but it ended up just being Thomas. So we'll see. At 8, this is the hardest one so far. The Panthers just traded for Sam Darnold, and Trey Lance is sitting there at 8, and it's really tempting to take him. But I don't think you give up that much draft capital and just to take another QB. You're kind of locked in with Darnold. They haven't executed his 5th-year option yet. They're kind of waiting on that. So I honestly they could go Slater here, or they could go Lance. I'm gonna say this regime is all in on Darnold. They think they can fix him. They have the weapons, way better supporting cast than they had in the Jets, and they'll add to that by taking Slater here.
Sean Slater, I think, is one of the more versatile offensive linemen in this class. Whether you need to play tackle or guard, he's going to find success in the league. I think for the Panthers, you kind of hit it right on the net. You hit the nail right on the head with, they need offensive line. And I think whether or not you believe in some of the talent on that line, there's definitely holes to where a guy like Slater elevates that play And right now at left tackle, I think Greg Little is the expected starter. So putting Slater right in at left tackle should be absolutely huge for the Panthers. And at number 9, honestly, I'm not sure what to do because I know the Denver Broncos likely aren't going to pass up the opportunity to pick a QB. But I do think at the same time, they aren't as sold on just getting rid of Drew Lock as a lot of us are. But still, with the talent on the board, with the potential that he offers, I'm going to go with Trey Lance for the Denver Broncos. Realistically, I think we're going to see a team like Chicago offer an ungodly amount of picks to make sure they get their QB, kind of buy some more time with the owner. Hopefully, it pans out and they can keep their jobs. But really, right now, with the way the board has played out, I think the Denver Broncos are a very set roster overall, and there's really just one position that holds them back at the moment, and it's QB. Drew Lock, not entirely done in the league. I'm sure, this situation kind of puts a damper on the lock stock for his upside and projection, but Trey Lance, plenty of upside, plenty of opportunity, and if Denver brings him in, I think they could be a playoff team as soon as next year.
Yeah, I mean, eventually the Broncos have to hit on one of these QBs, right? You just can't keep drafting them and having them bust. So next up, I don't know. This says I'm going to take is the Cowboys. They have a pretty clear need at cornerback. I think I'm going to give them Patrick Surtain here. It just seems too obvious at this point. You got his Alabama teammate last year. Might as well take the other guy right now. It's a perfect fit.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes the writing is on the wall for picks like this. If they were high on Diggs, they should be very high on Surtain, a very talented cornerback out of Alabama. Smooth, works well technically, and really can cover vertically extremely well. And that's kind of what the Cowboys tried to do. Diggs obviously had some bright moments as a rookie. Duo. I think I cut out there for a little bit, so sorry about that.
Yeah, you did a little bit.
But yeah, I just think that adding a young cornerback duo like that is definitely enticing, and the Cowboys have shown already that they like Diggs, so they should be very high on Surtain as well. With the number 11 pick, this is more of a what has been rumored for them than necessarily need. It sounds like if this guy falls, the Giants are all in on making sure they get him. And for me, I mean, that's not a bad pick, but maybe I would have gone interior offensive line or added some presence on the defense. But at number 11, Devonta Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama, definitely the talent is there. He can be special. He can be really a legend in this game if he continues to produce like he did at Alabama. I know he's small framed, but he still just dominates at the line of scrimmage. He has insane acceleration to really get out of any situation that is put against him. And for the Giants, Kenny Golladay, Devonta Smith, Sterling Shepard, there's plenty of weapons in this wide receiver room, and it now all falls on Daniel Jones. What are you going to do? And Bailey, I know you're a big fan of Daniel Jones. What do you think of him having Kenny Golladay and Devonta Smith in one offseason added to his wide receiver room?
I mean, it's kind of all the pressure's on him now. The teams did nothing but support him, try to build the right offense around him, built the offensive line around him, and it's just time for him to produce. This Giants team is very good. They had a very strong defense last year. They have a ton of high picks this year to kind of continue to add to that. And I think if you add Devonta Smith, that's your division winner right now there, the NFC East division winner.
Ooh, a little bit of a bold prediction, but I like it. So with the 12th pick, obviously the Philadelphia Eagles, plenty of options on the board. Where do you think they're going?
Can continue the run on Alabama players in the NFC East, as we kind of seen the last two picks. I think they're going to take Waddle. It's just so tough with this team. They have so many holes. They've invested so many resources at wide receiver just for it not to kind of pan out or work out. But I think Waddle's as close to a can't miss prospect you can get at a wide receiver. So I think that's going to be my pick. He's just going to be so deadly. And, hopefully, did their time with Jalen Hurts overlap at Alabama? I'm not sure.
Uh, I'm not sure actually. I think Waddle played a bit, but not too much.
Yeah, but the Alabama connection is still there,
They
and
they played a year together, but I'm not sure how much Waddle and Hurts really, in terms of production, what all they
yeah,
did
they're on
together.
the same team, close enough. Yeah, I just got to strengthen that connection.
And for the 13th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers have plenty of needs that they could address in this spot. I think kind of what I've seen out of the Rams was a lot of, you know, mid-round flyers that were just kind of athletic enough to get the job done. I don't think that Brandon Staley's just necessarily going to try to do this blueprint of what the Chargers have done, but I do think that the Chargers are going to address corner first and foremost. Brandon Staley, obviously a defensive guy, and the best corner on the board, in my opinion, is J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, and I think that's an excellent pick here. I think in that second round, could see the Chargers potentially move up, maybe even into the late first to try to get their offensive tackle of the future. But right now, got them going J.C. Horn to really solidify what is currently a question mark of a cornerback room.
Yeah, and I mean the Chargers can go in a lot of different directions. I just kind of think they go BPA, and yeah, J.C. Horn's definitely BPA at that spot. A great corner will be a lockdown guy for them. The cornerback position has been always such a strength for the Chargers, and in recent memory, and it's kind of fallen off a bit. And hopefully, this can help them regain some of the talent that they lost this offseason in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And now the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock. What do you got in store for the Skull Nation?
I got a trade actually. I got the Dolphins trading up to 14 here. They will do something. I think when we looked at it, it was like the Dolphins give up 18 and 50, 40, whatever. The Dolphins give up their first and their second, and the Vikings give their first and a third, kind of a swap there. And the Dolphins will be training up and take Parsons. I think we had a couple arguments about the Dolphins linebacker room, and I think there's some reports coming out that they absolutely love Parsons, and I buy it. He can be a real leader on that defense. They need a strong guy like that to kind of be the quarterback of the defense like that. I think Parsons fits the bill perfectly. He slid a lot, especially from the beginning of the draft cycle, where he's kind of seen as like a top 5 pick, and now you're getting him at 14. And I think the Dolphins will be all over that.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I think is underrated about that trade that you mentioned, the second round pick for the Dolphins goes to Minnesota, and they don't have a second round pick right now. So that works out perfectly for them. Whereas the Dolphins, they can move back a little bit. They had a close to playoff team last year. Obviously, you want to add as much talent as you can, but if you're getting a guy like Parsons, where you're thinking of him as a top 5, top 10 player on your board, and the next guy's sitting at around, maybe all the way down at 15 or whatever, then this is absolutely the right pick for the Dolphins. And I think that it works out well for both sides. I think Minnesota doesn't have to drop too far, but they still add some very good draft capitals to where they can have a full draft in this class. And you're up again with the Atlanta Falcons following the trade. Again, the Patriots traded up for Justin Fields, and now Falcons sit at 15. Who's going to be the pick for them?
You know, I think I've said this a lot, but the Falcons can go in a lot of directions. But when you look at their team and their needs, it's edge, it's corner, and it's safety, and it's left guard. Those are kind of the big needs they need to address coming into this draft. And when you look at the board, the best guy I see here is Kwity Paye. Kind of get that edge rusher, insane pro day, insane athleticism, insane everything. The Falcons have been needing edge rush for so long. Kind of been saying this for the last I don't know how many years. And hopefully, they kind of hit it this time. They get the guy who can produce for them. Kwity Paye is just such an athletic animal. It's hard to see him busting. And I think he'll be a valuable addition to this team.
Absolutely. I think that if the Atlanta Falcons do trade down, they need to address the defense. They're kind of buying into Matt Ryan and however long his tenure is going to be. So if you're buying in, you need to try to fill out this roster. Obviously, if you stick at 4, you can pick a Kyle Pitts, and I'm not going to say it's a terrible decision, or even maybe a Penei Sewell, and you add what is a great offensive tackle to a line that needs help on that right guard spot. You kick McGarry inside. But right now, if you're down at 15, you try to add some defensive talent, and I think Quiddy Pay, maybe they reach a little bit in terms of what the consensus thinks and grab like a Greg Newsome in the cornerback room. There's plenty of options for defensive talent in this class, and I think that with Quiddy Pay, they've definitely done a great job of adding it. And now at number 16, the Arizona Cardinals are on the board, and that's you again because of that trade. You're on the clock 3 times in a row. Cardinals obviously had a great offensive season. Are you looking to add more and bolster that unit, or are you looking to help out the defensive side?
You know, it's tough because you want to help this offense. You want to help out Kyler Murray as much as you can, but they have such a glaring need at cornerback, and they've been connected to this player for so many mock drafts, so long. I think, like we said, with the Cowboys, the writing's kind of on the wall with this one. I think I'm going to give them Caleb Farley.
I like the pick. I think that obviously with Caleb Farley, the issue that entered this class was just the medicals. And with the opt out, he didn't really get that next year to show his grown play. But there's plenty of talent here. He's quick footed, he's got great size, he can mirror pretty well. As long as he just kind of gets a little bit more refined, I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Arizona Cardinals adding a cornerback to a room that really could use it. Malcolm Butler probably going to be a serviceable starter. Byron Murphy, a very good slot corner, but adding Caleb Farley to that room, I think takes that unit from what is a big concern to now a pretty solid and promising looking group for the team.
Yeah, like you said, it's all about the injury and how serious it is. Caleb Farley could be one of those guys who sees a pretty serious draft day slide because us as the amateurs, we don't have access to the medicals, so we don't really have the full picture. But I'm just gonna use if we're just talking about talent alone, this is a great spot for Farley.
Absolutely. And with the 17th pick, it's tough to really gauge what the Raiders are going to do. I think a lot of people love to make the jokes about the Seattle Seahawks and how wacky they get with their picks in that first round, especially. But the Raiders have had a history of doing so as well, whether it was Cleveland Farrell at number 4 or picking guys like Jonathan Abrams later in the first. There's definitely picks that aren't seen as expected, and then they are on the clock come draft day and someone off the wall comes off. I think here I'm going to play it safe, play it a little boring, and I'm going to go with offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw. But I do want to say, if I had to make a wacky pick for them, I think it'd be, like a Levi Onwuzurike. We just saw them cut Maurice Hurst, and I think that they could be in the market to look for a new defensive tackle, whether that's Barmore, whether that's Levi O, or whether that's Davion Nixon. There's plenty of options in this class, but right now I'll play it safe. I'll fill in the right tackle. Obviously great length out of Darrisaw. He's my offensive tackle number 2. I'm a huge fan. I think if you're looking for getting cheaper at the position while still having a very talented option, Darrisaw fills that need for both boxes.
Yeah, Darrisaw would be a great pick for them. They lost a ton of their offensive line. There's a lot of turnover, and this pick just makes sense. It fills an immediate need, and yeah, just kind of a great pick.
So now at 18, following the Miami Dolphins trade up for Micah Parsons, is the Minnesota Dolphins. Bailey, who you got them taking?
The Minnesota Vikings, not the
Minnesota
Minnesota
Vikings, sorry.
Dolphins. We'll take Elijah Vera Tucker here. If I was at 14, this is the pick I'd be making. I think they're excited to pick up that second, like you said, and still get the guy they were targeting. They have a pretty huge gaping hole in their interior offensive line. Gary Bradbury, the first round pick a couple years ago, hasn't been turning out as great as they'd hoped, and they just need to add some more talent in there.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I felt about the Vikings in terms of fits is Creed Humphrey out of Oklahoma. And if they are looking to move on from Bradbury, or they think that Humphrey can play guard, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a kind of earlier pick for Humphrey than expected with the Minnesota Vikings. I think in terms of pulling blockers, there's no one better in this class than Humphrey. He gets out wide well, he moves downfield well, and really he's an athletic player that can fit at both the guard or center spot. If the Vikings pick him, it wouldn't shock me at all. And I think in terms of how they operate with their run game, it would be a great fit as well. With the number 19th pick, the Washington football team, now without a QB of the future, really, sitting with Fitzpatrick, they aren't going to force the need. They aren't going to go and grab Davis Mills, Kellen Mond, Kyle Trask. I don't think that's the way they go. I understand if you're desperate for the position, some people think, oh, just pick whatever biggest need is and next guy on the board. That's not how a lot of teams operate. So at 19, while they'd love to get their QB of the future, I think if they don't trade up, they aren't taking a quarterback. And at 19, that means that they got to fill another need. And for me, in terms of talent and in terms of need, there's no better fit than Zaven Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa. Versatile enough in this defense to play anywhere that you really need him to at 270 pounds now, but moves extremely well. This linebacker unit has plenty of question marks all over the field. And adding Zaven Collins with his coverage ability, I think at the very least, you're getting a dependable starter right away with upside for really superstar potential.
Yeah, Zaven Collins will be a great addition to that defense, which was a strength for the Washington football team last year. And you continually add to that. I'm not sure how much faith you have in Ryan Fitzpatrick as, kind of being in an offense, leading that offense to being a top 10, top 15 unit. So your defense is going to have to win you games. And, adding Zaven Collins, adding to his strength there definitely makes a lot of sense for them. Next up, I got the Chicago Bears, who are kind of, in a similar spot as the Washington football team. They need a QB. They brought in a veteran who's kind of been disappointing with Andy Dalton, but I think it's Andy Dalton's job right now, and I think you got to protect him. You got to do what you can, and you got to get the most pro-ready guy. You got to be ready to compete right now. The head coach and the GM don't have a lot left on their leash, so I'm going to give them Tevin Jenkins, who can immediately, kind of slot into the right tackle spot, be a day one starter for them, and he's going to be solid.
Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. If you turn on his tape, you're going to see someone that has a bit of a mean streak. He's extremely aggressive, love his motor. I think he's one of the better run blocking tackles in this class. Absolutely a phenomenal pick. And it's really a smart choice for the Bears. I know on draft day, if the Bears don't come out with a QB that they feel can be the future of this team, a lot of fans are going to chop it up as a loss of a draft and F on the grade sheet. But really, adding good players is the way you build a foundation for your QB. Yes, it's disappointing compared to what the potential is of getting a QB, but at the same time, next year, let's say Pace and Nagy are gone and you're looking to get that QB of the future, having a good roster in place is much more important than just picking a QB for the sake of picking a QB.
Right. Kind of similar to what we saw with, Rosen and Kyler a couple of years ago, where they just kind of took a QB out of, need, and then they replaced a new regime and the QB got replaced. So you're definitely right. Get players that you'll stick to your roster. That'll be contributors, especially if you're thinking about making a change at the coach and GM position.
And at number 21, the Indianapolis Colts got their QB. They traded for Carson Wentz. Now they're looking to fill out the rest of this roster. I think one of the big positions that's always been talked about for the Colts is that left tackle spot. And I think it's very possible that they address it. But I think at the same time, we could see them make a move elsewhere on this roster. And I think that's what I'm going to do here. I think right now, with the way the board is, I don't love picking a QB or picking a left tackle right now. And for that, I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami, Florida. I think there's plenty of upside here, plenty of athleticism, but also if you can convert him with health and keep that stuff off the field, this guy has the potential to be one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. I think in terms of just pass rush ability, he is probably number one in this class. And really, it's just now trying to polish his game, get him a little bit more disciplined in the run game, and keeping him healthy. And if he does so, Jalen Phillips at 21 is an absolute steal.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And I think he's another guy who, it all depends on the medicals with him. He had to medically retire from college football. He came back, he dominated, he played his way into as a first round edge, might be the first edge off the board, but it's always with those medicals. And the Colts definitely do need an edge. They've kind of addressed the position in the past, and it never hasn't really worked out for them. They got some good production last year from some veterans, but they need a young guy in there that they can kind of build and add to that defense. And Phillips is definitely a great fit for them. So next up is my Tennessee Titans here. There's a couple directions we can go in here, but when you look at both of the big two needs, in my opinion, are cornerback and wide receiver. When you look at those two groups on a roster, it's really not that great. And so you can go with like a Rashad Bateman here, but I want to go with Greg Newsome, cornerback. And I just think the defense was so bad last year, and I kind of think that with their offensive scheme, you can kind of get some lower quality players in there, and they'll produce. But we need some young players at our cornerback. I think right now, Kevin Joseph is our cornerback 3. We got Fulton last year. He's a rookie. We still need to add some talent there. And then we signed Janoris Jenkins, but that's only for basically a 1-year deal. So Greg Newsome's kind of the pick I've been leading with recently.
And I think that's definitely someone that could potentially fly up boards. Obviously, a very intelligent player, offers great size, had a tremendous pro day. A lot of the boxes are checked, and I think, whether it's a team like Arizona or maybe a team surprises and picks him even earlier, I think Newsome could be a guy that even at 22, he's off the board. At 22, I think it's a great pick. For the Titans, though, you've kind of talked about there's a few different positions that they could really address, but the big needs are that offensive wide receiver weapon and corner. Do you think that the offensive tackle and down lineman edge spot could come into play in that first round if the board plays out correctly for the Titans?
Definitely. With the offseason the Titans have had, there's a lot of holes that need to be addressed by the draft. We have cornerback, wide receiver, offensive tackle. We cut our starting offensive tackle, Dennis Kelly. We replaced him with Kendall Lamb. Not really sold on him being a starting right tackle on our team. That can be a position we address. Edge, we signed Bud Dupree and Harold Landry, obviously already on the team, but we have no depth behind them. So that's definitely a position that we could address. They could really go do whatever they want. But in terms of edge, I think that's a guy we address later, day 2. We already have 2 starters. We don't really need drafting a backup player in the first round isn't really a great idea. I don't think, especially with the limited amount of snaps you have and the window the Titans do have, kind of need a guy who's going to be on the field a lot. But that's definitely a position we could address later in the draft. Offensive tackle, Kendall Lamb, I guess, is a serviceable starter. I wouldn't hate if he was a starter going to the year, but that's definitely another position we could address. And corner and wide receiver, I think, are the big 2 question marks right now. So that's, if I was a betting man, I would say those are the 2 positions we'll take in the first round. Either one of those 2.
Absolutely. And at 23, the New York Jets are on the clock for the second time. Obviously, picked Zach Wilson with the number 2 pick, but now they're on the board to try to fill out the rest of the roster. I think corner is a big need, but I think with the way Saleh kind of operates, he gets those mid-round guys that have the body and size to really fit his scheme. At 23, I don't think he's going to force the need. You look at running back, they could go for a Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. But again, it's one of those things where I think what you saw from San Francisco, they have a staple of backs, and I think that the Jets are going to try to take a similar approach. Wide receiver, they filled in the offseason. So now I look at the offensive line and edge position. And really, for the highest guy on my board, for what I think fills a need, but also has the consensus value to go in this range, I'm going with Liam Eichenberg. And I don't think that he's going to be a tackle. I think that for this selection, he's going to be an offensive guard. But if you put Liam Eichenberg and Mekhi Becton on the same line, together, same side of the ball. Yes, it's young, but I think it's going to be one of the best sides of the football in the NFL. And Eichenberg is someone that I am tremendously high on in terms of both tackle and guard. Obviously his arms weren't as long as expected, and that kind of drops his tackle projection, maybe his tackle upside, but he offers the flexibility and the play strength to be able to maintain the outside, but he also has the polish and technique and hand usage to really dominate on the inside as well. Putting him on this Jets offensive line, I think, transforms it from what is already an improving offensive line to now a good one. And we saw it with Darnold. A bad offensive line can really tank a lot of things. If you are a Jets fan and you want Zach Wilson to actually work out, then you should be hoping that the Jets are investing in protecting him, because that is a big part of QB confidence.
Absolutely agree. And, with the Jamal Adams trade, you have a lot of capital to kind of, take that cornerback later that you might need, or take that running back later if you like the guys later in the draft. Eichenberg's a great pick. It's interesting that you have him as guard. I think he could be a tackle, and I'm sure you agree with that. And you might be better at guard, but I actually don't know the Jets' O line off the top of my head, so I'm not sure about where he'd play. But you're saying left guard. Yeah, I mean, it's a great pick. It's a very talented player. His tape was amazing. Kind of shut down a lot of players. So next up, this is Steelers at 24. You know, this is more of a what I think they will do pick rather than a what they should do pick. And so I'm going to give them Najee Harris, running back. I think the Brass will come together and they looked at what didn't work last year. What was the big issue? And it was their running game. And I think they think by adding a Najee Harris instead of a James Conner, Jalen Samuels, whoever they had running back there, it's a huge upgrade at the position. And Najee Harris, could definitely succeed behind a bad line. He has the contact strength to play through some of the guys coming into the backfield. And I think this fits a huge need for them. I could also see them going center here, going cornerback here, offensive tackle even. They just have a lot of needs.
Absolutely. And the Steelers are in a weird spot because obviously last year put together this great season, kind of fell off at the end. And now the really opinions on them is just like what's going to happen with year two after falling off as much as they did. Are they going to bounce back and be that team that dominated out the gates, or are they going to be a team that plays like how they did in that back half of the season and potentially even miss playoffs? And AFC North is nothing to play with, so if you're losing games consistently, you aren't going to be getting a lot of easy wins in that division. Even the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be taking a much better season, I think, in this year. Whether or not they move up from that last place spot in the division, kind of up in the air. But still, if the Steelers come out cold like they did to end last year, then they are very likely to miss playoffs. What do you think the overall projection for the Steelers is for this upcoming season?
I don't know. It's going to depend on Big Ben, obviously. It's always about the quarterback play. And I think, he's kind of on his last legs here. I think this is going to be a disaster season for them. It's very easy to see them finish last in their division, very tough division they play in, with Burrow coming back healthy and, obviously the Rams, the Ravens, sorry, and the Browns being playoff teams last year. It's tough. And if they don't make a serious adjust, upgrades in the draft, hit on all their picks, I could easily see them coming last.
With the 25th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars have their second selection of the draft. Trevor Lawrence with the first pick, obviously easy to make. But at number 25, things kind of get interesting. The Jacksonville Jaguars have really done a very strong job of filling out this roster, getting pieces to fill out and really potential depth for the long haul. I think they've done a nice job of kind of not really splurging on this market, even though maybe money was tight for a lot of teams. They were sure not to overspend, really got a lot of guys that they think can be starters in year one and potentially long term. But at the same time, they weren't just giving out these huge price tags left and right. Maybe that means next year they're going to be big players, but right now I think they've done a good job of filling out this roster to where a lot of needs aren't as big as they may appear. And I think based on what I've heard, that's why I'm going with Christian Barmore at number 25. Yes, they added Roy Robertson Harris, but I think that 3-tech spot is wide open, and I think Barmore could step in and really offer plenty of upside. You look at the back half of Barmore's season, and there's just probably no one better in college football. He was able to put up great numbers, and he has a great frame as well. 6'4", 6'5", 310 pounds, offers pass rush upside, like we said. Very athletic, very good frame. I think you look at what he brings to the table and also just the potential, and I think the Jaguars are going to be in on him. And I know there's other holes maybe on this roster, tight end obviously wide open, but in terms of positions that they could fill and need, this is probably the pick that I would go with if I were the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, Barmore obviously is an amazing 3-tech, can really penetrate the line there. And I don't know, like the Jags kind of are in a weird spot where they could really take any position. They can really just take best player available. Uh, in fact, they found up a bunch of great interior D-line players last year. And they, as you said, they added some guys in free agency, but this could be the pick. Barmore would be the most talented player on their D-line for sure. And he could wreak havoc in the AFC South for years to come. Barmore was my pick to 26 for the Browns, who have now been sniped. And I think that with the board looking the way there is and the way that their roster looks, I'm going to give them Rashad Bateman, wide receiver. When you look at like kind of more of a salary cap approach, their two biggest players right now in terms of contracts are Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. And I don't think the two of them are going to stay on the team for that much longer. Both of them kind of have an injury history too, and you don't want to be left with a situation like you're left with against Jets last year. It's kind of a different situation with COVID, but you need depth at all your positions. And I think Rashad Bateman is just too good of a value to pass up here at 26. And I think that one of Odell Beckham or Jarvis Landry will be gone by next year, either via trade or release. So you got to make sure that you had some continuity to the position. Both of them could be gone, honestly. And you need some continuity in the position. You don't want to give, Baker a bunch of whole new weapons. Give a guy that he can kind of get used to first before you make a major upheaval at the group.
At number 27, the Baltimore Ravens, fresh off of a very successful season, but now with some big question marks all around. There's been rumors that they're committed to getting a wide receiver for Lamar Jackson in the first 2 rounds. There's been the obvious Orlando Brown trade that we've talked about before on the show, and now it has happened. He has gone to the Kansas City Chiefs. That right tackle spot is wide open. They need some help on the edge with Matthew Judon leaving to the New England Patriots. And really, there's some other positions on this team. Defensive line could always get younger. Interior offensive line needs help. For this pick, it's tough to really gauge what position I would address first. In terms of personal, what I would do, there's guys that I like. But in terms of what I expect the Ravens to do, I think the pick here is going to be Alex Leatherwood. And what he brings to the table as an offensive tackle is going to be enticing to teams. I think he offers plenty of upside, plenty of frame, and really that's going to be the big appeal is the athletic upside. A lot of offensive line coaches are all in on what they can do personally. And when you look at what the Ravens have done with their offensive line, with guys like Orlando Brown, with guys like Ronnie Stanley, and really turning these guys into great offensive tackles. I think you look at a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who offers such a great profile for an offensive tackle to find success that they're not going to be worried about it at all. And they're going to say, well, let's get him and just watch what I make him into.
Yeah, Leatherwood, obviously, with the super long arms, with the production, with the years of experience, and the fact they played for Alabama, checks off a lot of boxes as a first-round guy, kind of a lock. And he would be a great replacement for them there. He'd be a great fit in the kind of run-heavy stuff that they do. And, this is a nice replacement at right tackle. for replacing Orlando Brown. Next up is the Saints, who kind of had a disastrous offseason. Everybody with the salary cap isn't real thing, but they've lost so much snaps, so many starters, and they could really do anything here. I think I will have them take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker here. Like, it's just a need for them. It's just one of the needs for them. Just a top guy. I think that would fit their scheme. He's a 3-down linebacker. He fits in the nickel. He can fit as a dime linebacker. He just fits everywhere. He's kind of like a chess piece on the defense. You can kind of slot him everywhere, different schemes, different alignments. And if you're talking about snaps lost, I think he could, kind of replace a lot of those snaps that you've lost. He could be a 600 snap player for them right out of the gate.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things about Owusu-Koramoah that a lot of people have reservations on is they look at him almost as a safety type player. But he's 220 pounds. He is the same frame as Deion Jones. He can very well play linebacker in this league. He's got the skill set to be versatile. He can move around. He can play slot corner if needed. But don't overstate his versatility as a weakness or a frame issue, because while he is not going to be the size of a Micah Parsons or a Zaven Collins, he's 220. Like, he's good enough size-wise to play in this league and compete in this league in terms of physicality, and he's got the skill set to do it. Owusu-Koramoah at 28, I think, is a great pick and really a steal for his value.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're talking about the modern NFL linebacker, and I think you can get better than JOK. You need a guy you can have down your base alignments and your nickel, kind of slide over, cover the slot guy. Even in the dime, we've seen a lot of dime kind of recently. I think the Browns talked about running it a lot more, and he can even slide back to safety with those looks. And yeah, just a great versatile player.
One of the big positions of need for the Saints is that cornerback slot. Do you think that with Richard there as the Saints' new pass game coordinator, do you think Richard Sherman is on the way following this draft, or do you think that it's something that they need to address in this draft?
I think it's definitely something that they will and have to address in the draft. I do not think they can add any more players via free agency. I do not think they have the cap to do so. If they can, I don't know. It's just impossible as far as I can see. And I think they will start to add some more, kind of Seattle type cornerbacks, like a Benjamin St. Just later in the draft, or some of those bigger guys that can fit their scheme. Lattimore's a little bit on the shorter side, so we'll definitely see what they do later in the draft.
And at 29, the Green Bay Packers are on the clock. And really, you talk about the Saints offseason, but the Packers lost plenty of talent as well. And one of the big names was Corey Linsley. I think you have to find a way to replace him. I understand that there's some talent on this class to where the offensive line may not be as disastrous as it looks on paper, but I think that center spot is still a wide open hole. And for that, Creed Humphrey, I think the athletic upside overall testing profile is definitely enticing for the Packers and the NFL. Like, Creed Humphrey is someone that I think is likely going to be a first-round pick. Personally, I prefer Dickerson at the center spot, but I think that Creed Humphrey does enough in terms of what he can offer in the run game. Developing his pass sets, I think, will be absolutely huge for his projection to the NFL. And assuming that he can do that, be better with his overall base, he's going to be a good center in the league, and the Packers definitely need some help on the interior offensive line.
Yeah, you're definitely right that they left the kind of, there's a hole there at the center position, and you just kind of want to run it back with Aaron Rodgers at this point. You kind of squeeze out all you can of him before he gets replaced by Jordan Love eventually. And, the other is a great pick. He can slide and be a day one starter for them and help them hopefully win in that NFC Championship game they've been wanting to for so long. Next up is the Bills. Kind of a surprising season for them in their dominance. But they still do have a lot of holes on the roster. They can go cornerback here. They can go edge, running back. And I think this may just be like me just projecting, but I'm going to give them Travis Etienne here, running back. And I know they have a need a corner and at edge, but you give these guys a lethal running game, and they're just unstoppable on offense. And I know they have talent there. They got Zach Moss there. They got who's the other running back? Devin Singletary, right?
Yeah.
Devin Singletary. You have the guys, but I think ETN is just kind of the perfect fit for them. He's so quick, and with the defenses being stretched out by Josh Allen's huge arm and his power running style, I think ETN slots perfectly into their scheme. He's gonna be, the kind of the true three down running back they've been looking for, and I don't know how you're gonna stop this offense now.
I think I agree. And I think the big question here is, do you prefer ETN over Najee Harris, or do you think that ETN is just the better fit in Buffalo?
I think it's about scheme fit when it comes down to these two running backs because they're kind of two different runners. I like ETN for his speed and his quickness, and I like Najee Harris is more of kind of like a bulldog, more of the power stuff, the contact balance, his pass catching ability. So yeah, I think that ETN's like a better fit in Buffalo, but like for the Jets, I would take Najee Harris. It's all just about personal preference and what scheme you want to run when it comes to separating these two guys.
I got you. And with the number 31 pick in this draft, the Baltimore Ravens back on the clock after the Orlando Brown trade with the Kansas City Chiefs. At 31, the Ravens likely are going to trade back. And I think that it's something that I would really consider here. And I'm going to have it happen. I think right here, I'm not sure on the exact details, but I think this is where the Chargers trade back into this first round to go and get some protection for their guy, which is Justin Herbert. Get some protection for the running game, get Austin Eckler some extra holes. And I think the guy that I go with has to be Dylan Radins. And I think that you look at the overall projection for what the Rams kind of had as their offensive tackles, and they really depended on athleticism. And I think Radins is kind of underrated in terms of his overall athletic profile. I think he offers plenty of upside. You look at guys like Brian O'Neill, that weight can come, but the athletic upside, the overall range of motion is completely understated for Radins. And I think in the first round, he's an absolute great pick to have. You get that extra year for development. I think maybe he could have his issues early on, just trying to get that play strength up to NFL standards. But if you get that fifth year, you're having 4 years of very good play. And I still think that in that first year, he could be a very dependable starter, helps out what is a struggling Chargers offensive line. I know the rumors are that they love Trey Pipkins, and I'm sure that they're not even going to say, oh, we drafted Radins, now we don't like Pipkins anymore. They're just going to say, oh, we're bolstering a position we already think is good enough. It's classic GM talk. It's classic team talk. The Chargers have a needed offensive tackle. They need to protect their QB of the future, and Dylan Radins, I think, does that very well.
Yeah, like you said, the athletic offensive tackle was huge for the Rams. They could even go like a Samuel Cosme here. There's a lot of offensive tackles that kind of fit that bill. Maybe a Spencer Brown later in the draft. But yeah, the Chargers definitely need to protect Herbert. I would say they kind of got lucky here where they got their franchise QB, and he was so good year one already, and he's going to be a star in the league. And your number one objective now is just to protect him and build an offense around him that he can succeed in. At 32, we have the Buccaneers, Super Bowl champs, last pick, and there's a lot of positions they can go here, but I think that they're going to take Gregory Rousseau, the edge. He's a guy who's definitely slid down draft boards a lot, but I still think he's a first round guy, and I think the talent's still there. And he's so young. He put up such insane production numbers when he was 19, and kind of had a different disappointing pro day. But when you watch the tape, you look at his measurables, and they're all there. And I think he's going to be a very productive starter for them.
And you look at what they have at the edge position already: Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. I think if you're looking at Rousseau, you're saying, well, I'd love for him to be able to kind of replicate what Jason Pierre-Paul already brings to the table and become his eventual successor. And I think that's very possible. Rousseau, obviously great length, can play deep, can play down lineman because of his ability to work inside. I think Jason Pierre-Paul would be a great mentor for him. Overall, though, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, do you think that with this pick, they're going to be as heavy addressing a need when their team kind of lacks it? Or do you think that they're just going to say, well, who do we think offers the highest upside? Or do you think, well, let's just find who we think has the highest just pure talent right away because we're trying to maximize what is a contending window right now?
I think it's definitely, what's the guy who may make the most impact to my team this season? And, it's very rare for a Super Bowl team just to run back with the exact same roster. I think the only starter that they haven't re-signed right now is Antonio Brown. He's like rumored to come back. So, they could take a wide receiver here. They could take a Tony or or Terrace Marshall or Elijah Moore. But, it really just depends on what they think their biggest hole is and what internally they think is what's the one position or the one spot that we need the biggest help at. And, definitely could be edge, and it definitely could be, interior line. It could be wide receiver, and, I just picked an edge here, but I could see any of those three positions being taken on draft day.
We got some questions from the comment section, some other additional comments as well. So we're going to bring them in right now. We'll pull them up on screen. We have a question from Twitch saying, I struggled to see the Falcons making the playoffs with Farther Smith calling the shots. A shot in itself at head coach Arthur Smith. What are your thoughts on his projection as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons?
Smith definitely did struggle in that playoff game against the Ravens, but I think he's a great head coach. He's a great play caller. He's a great offensive coordinator. And, I think they're going to make the playoffs next year. We'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but that's just my prediction right now.
And then another question from the comment section coming from Twitch. With Davis and Bond at outside linebacker, do you think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah can play middle linebacker? Seems like that's their big hole.
Yeah, definitely think he can. I don't know how much more depth in. Yes, I think he can play the Mike linebacker position. He can play anywhere really you really want. He's a bit light, but it's not really a big issue for me.
I think I agree. Maybe Demario Davis kicks inside just to help things out a little bit, but I think that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah offers the versatility to where he could play inside. I think if they had those three in their linebacker unit, I think we'd see a lot of rotations, a lot of changed up looks to where these guys are rotating all throughout. I know you want to see some familiarity, but I think all of these guys offer some versatility to where they can play all around that front seven, or at least in the linebacker unit, and really produce in a way that the Saints would be able to find success with it. And then we have a comment from the YouTube comment section from Nerd for Football. Love the edge pick at 32. Excellent value. We agree here. We're both fans of Rousseau. Think that he has gotten a little bit slept on in this draft process. Still, questions about whether he goes round one, but I do think that whoever gets Rousseau is still getting a very safe and polished player that should be fun with some upside to go along with it. That's all we got for you today on Destination Draft Day. We are going to be having a Wednesday special episode. That'll be me and Nick Durst with potentially Brian Sosa as well to talk about the draft and the day before with all the rumors that are flying around. Obviously, with this week, things are going to be coming out crazy. We'll be here to dissect it all. Thank you so much to Bailey Kumar for coming on the show today for this final mock draft of the 2021 draft season. Thanks to everyone in the comment section, and thanks to LandryFootball.com for the platform. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Take care.